Welcome to the Real Chili Podcast.
And the Golden Eagles of Marquette University in Milwaukee are bound for the Final Four for only the third time ever.
5 seconds left. Marquette down by one, trying to avoid the upset. Blue the drive, the left hand. It's good. 1 second to play. Vander Blue has put Marquette in front by one.
And I want to win every day as basketball players, as students, and I want to win every day, most importantly, as people.
Somebody please help Len Elmore and explain to him what the three-point line is. Good day, everybody. Welcome to the Real Chili Podcast, a dispirited but not broken podcast today as Marquette falls to Villanova 100-90 in their latest Big East game. My name is Brian Henry, joined alongside by our newest contributor, John Fick. John, how are you?
I'm doing all right. Better than I expected after a week-long layoff for Nova to stew on revenge and come at us. But, you know, it is what it is.
It is what it is seems to be a lot of the thought process, but I think by the majority of the fan base, but I think you and I are going to have different takes on it away from that as we get going today. Anyone out there that expected Marquette to win this game was obviously smoking something. This was a game we all anticipated they would lose. John, I don't think that takes maybe the slight sting out of it as you watched it, because there were a lot of good things that were done in it, but a lot of the same mistakes that we've grown accustomed to just saying, well, that's how it's going to be.
I think I would agree with that. I also think that when you kind of sketch out the season, and you guys did a good job of breaking down the whole conference season, no one's banking on a win at Nova to shore up the resume. No one's expecting that. You're expecting to lose, and the circumstances played out in such a way that gave Nova all the motivation in the world. Coming out of it with a 10-point loss, I don't think that's necessarily bad in and of itself, just on paper.
It was bad for the gambling community, I can tell you that, for those of us that lost a few dollars on this game.
I mean, again, I don't know. It was, what is the line, 16? 16's a lot of points to lay.
It got to 16. Some of us may have gotten in at 15 and a half. So.
And the thing is, and this is why I think Marquette is both a terrible team to gamble on or against, and how they managed to keep it to 10 and had such an effective second half, is that they can shoot their way kind of past or through anyone. They put 56 points on the board in the second half, and it wasn't enough to dig themselves out of a hole that they dug themselves in the first half. But this team is a really effective offensive team, and I don't know how you gamble on that, how you build a line. But, I mean, Markus Howard put up 37. I mean, he comes off of 52. Maybe 37 isn't that impressive anymore. But 37 against the number 3 ranked team in the country.
It was impressive against that team. On the road, in that building, 37, absolutely it was impressive.
And, 6 of 6 from the free throw line. He played well. Rowsey, his backcourt partner, played very poorly. And so you're looking at the game, and it's hard to get a sense of where they were on it because Rowsey played so poorly. They ended up losing by 10. Same problems as always, kind of bad defense. We let Nova get to the line a total of 32 times. They went 27 of 32 from the line. There's your ball game, folks. We only lost by 10.
We're going to get into all of that, which John just outlined. That was an excellent synopsis of the basketball game. I want to start with a couple positives. And John, for me, this was the biggest thing that I took away. There were plenty of opportunities in that game, specifically with about 14 minutes left in the second half, where they could have rolled over like dogs and gotten spanked. And they probably, no, and I don't think anyone would have batted an eye at that when they were down 17 in that second half. And they fought back. The under 12 timeout, where they stuck the boom mic in the huddle with Wojo, and I believe it's Marcus, Froling, Elliott, and Cain, and Hauser was off screen right. And he goes through and he talks about something tactically, and then he looked at the 2 freshmen and the transferred in sophomore and goes, compete, compete, compete. He looked right at him and said it. Hokey to some degree. I'll tell you what, though, they did it. They came out and got stops. They completely took the crowd out of the game and got it down to a 7-point ball game. Man, I was thoroughly impressed by just that sequence right there.
And I think one of the major takeaways is that you're starting to see Greg Elliott in particular and Jamal Cain to a slightly less degree, but they're both making incredibly valuable contributions to this team, and they change the complexion of the defense with their length. In a way, their ability to clog up passing lanes and with their length kind of change the way that dribble drives work, take some pressure off of the deficiencies in rotation that we've harped on over and over and over again. You get stops, and then you give this offense some chances. You can carve up and carve into a lead. That's how you make a comeback. And I want to say there was 25 huge minutes from Greg Elliott today, 13 from Jamal Cain. They're starting to play less like freshmen and more like sophomores as the season goes on. And they need them. They need every one of those big contributing minutes out of those guys.
So here's a question I want to pose to you, and I think people around, I saw a little bit of it on Twitter, but this was definitely something I thought, and I'm curious for your take. In that second half, you're Wojo, and you already outlined how poorly Andrew Rowsey played in this game. We're not going to sit here and bash Andrew. He's the first or second best player on this team on a given day. He's had 30-plus point games that have carried us. Big reason we beat Georgetown was because of him. We're not going to go off a lot. But he was awful. Couldn't hit shots, turned the ball over. He was bad today against a physically superior Villanova team. Now, how long of a leash do you give a guy like that when he's struggling? Because when he finally kind of yanked it at that 12-minute mark of the second half, when they went bigger with Cain and Elliott, they made their run. Where are you at with kind of how Wojo had? I think he gave the right amount of leash to Rowsey to pull himself out of it. When he didn't, all right, we got to try something else. Fair?
I would absolutely agree. It's hard to sit back and armchair coach a team.
Agreed. And I don't want it to, I'm not trying to turn it into that, but it was an interesting way to watch it because I have to imagine Wojo had that conflict going in his head.
Absolutely, and to mix the sports a tiny bit, I have the misfortune of being a Milwaukee Brewers fan, and I've seen a series of closers come through, and you can almost tell off the first pitch, if they get the slider across, they're going to be effective. If they don't, I would just yank them right then and there. But then again, I'm not a Major League Baseball manager. I do think there is value in assessing a player who can be a little hot and cold, and if they don't have it, yank them. Put them on the bench. Maybe a little pine will be an effective teacher, or maybe somebody's just cold that day. I don't know.
Let's ask a bigger question from just Andrew Rowsey. All right, we watched that entire basketball game. Cain, no one's going to run away from. You gave up 100 points in 40 minutes, as you already outlined. The next time these two teams play, I have to imagine, if you're the coaching staff, how do you not say, to give ourselves a shot, we've got to play bigger, and that means we might have to sacrifice playing Rowsey and Howard at the same time. We're going to do a larger section on Markus here in a second. Markus got beat up on the defensive end, not because he can't play, because they have big guards on that team. They killed him inside.
Absolutely, and I think you look at the minute chart, and Rowsey played 26 not great minutes. Howard played 38 minutes.
Of spectacular offensive basketball.
And you wonder if you could get some sort of a minute chart out there where Rowsey's the single guard and vice versa, where you can use them to spell the other. And then you're using Elliott a little bit more. You end up with fresher legs on the defensive end coming back, and you don't sacrifice nearly as much as you might have at the beginning of the season with Greg Elliott's development. And you are able to maybe counter the length and size of a team like Nova by doing that. If Rowsey plays 75 to 50% of what we're come to expect rather than 25% of what we've come to expect, then you can make those trade-offs a little bit more. But Rowsey just didn't have it yesterday. You couldn't do that.
Right. And I'm not implying to park Andrew on the bench. I think we all know what a devastating offensive player he can be to an opposing team. By no means are we suggesting that. But look, for as great as Markus was today, Jalen Brunson almost canceled him out. Jalen Brunson, there's a reason he's going to be a potential All-American this season. Props to Markus for going right at him. He's a good defender, and Markus gave him 38 points tonight. A few other guys rotated onto Markus, but a lot of that was on Jalen Brunson. But Brunson came right back and gave it to him on the other end. I mean, you could see what the game plan was very clearly. High pick and rolls, and he was not looking to come off screens and shoot like our guys. He was downhill getting to the basket because he had the upper body strength and lower body strength and everything, every other kind of strength to go through Markus to get to the basket or to be able to pull up and knock down an effective 15-footer. That is a stud of a guard that Villanova has that's going to give them a chance to compete for the national title.
Absolutely, and you see the free throw margin kind of rear its ugly head in the way that he plays. He came off of screens. He was driving. He was initiating contact. He got to the line
11 times
and knocked down 9 free throws. So it's a different offensive dynamic. It's one that Marquette fans are familiar with, from the Jimmy Butlers of the world that we've been able to watch, where they were aggressive off the bounce and got to the line a lot. Our offense as it stands is much more of a 3-point oriented offense, so you don't get to the line nearly as much. Jalen Brunson is sort of a window into how that dynamic can change and force a defense to react and can really break it down. He was spectacular last night.
Before we dive into Seton Hall and looking to the next game, we would be remiss if we did not spend a few minutes heaping praise on what we've already said was another absolutely spectacular outing by Markus Howard against one of the best teams in the country on the road in their building. He went into heat check mode again and is the only reason that this game wasn't a 25-plus point blowout. Against a defense that was designed to stop him, he still got his. John, I think that was 52 points is always going to be the benchmark because of the number. I think that a performance today may have been more impressive considering who it was against.
Yeah, and that Jay Wright, it's not like Jay Wright didn't have the film, didn't know what to expect, and when Markus is the only of the two guards out there, it's not like he didn't know that the offense is going to be running through Howard. So, yeah, I think that the defense was probably geared, especially and coached. They had a week to prep for the Markus Howard show, and it didn't really matter. One of the things that I thought was impressive is of those 37 points, he was 5 of 13 from 3, which means if he was 13 of 27 overall, he got 8 buckets inside the arc. That very much so changes the way that you have to defend him. If he is nothing but a 3-point shooter, it's easier to kind of face guard him. It's easier to pressure him at the 3-point line. And with his height, that might change his ability to get shots. But he was able to get into the lane and finish. He was able to hit a few floaters. He got a couple of garbage buckets off of offensive rebounds. And then he had 8 assists on top of all of that. He really was kind of the do-it-all show that kept the offense running in his 38 minutes. So,
well, and John, not just, you mentioned there he was able to get to the basket and finish at the rim. The degree of difficulty on some of those finishes were NBA caliber shots. The runner he hit after splitting the hedge at the top of the key in the second half. He had a reverse layup in traffic. He had another one where legitimately it looked like he was driving at Pascal, and you were like, what is he doing? And he was able to switch the ball from his left to his right hand and finish. Now, you're like, yeah, that's what you're supposed to do. There aren't a whole lot of guys that can do that at full speed. It's a small list of guys that can finish at that elite of a level. I just couldn't get over that. That was what impressed me the most.
The piece of his game offensively that seems to be the most reminiscent of the current NBA is the jab step at the arc, step back, and pop.
Right.
For a 3, and he buries them. And normally I would say, no, under no circumstances is that the shot you want, but he hits them with some regularity. That's the kind of thing we expect to see when we're watching the Warriors.
I said this earlier in the year during a stretch. I think it was I believe I said this after the loss to Xavier, where Rowsey had taken a real tough shot late after an offensive rebound, and it was a contested runner. I'm more comfortable with him taking a contested challenge shot than maybe Sakar Anim a wide open jumper. I think Markus has earned the exact same thing. You're okay with those two guys really with just about any shot they take.
Yeah, and until they start showing that they can't hit these things, then absolutely. Markus has given an abundant amount of evidence that says that he can hit the step back three, that he can hit a three in transition, that he can hit the runner, the floater, he can hit the reverse layup. I don't know that there's a shot on the floor that is a bad shot unless he's really, really contested, really covered. And he doesn't take too many of those heat check, hand-in-the-face three.
Marquette put 90 points on the board at Villanova, which obviously is an excellent offensive output. John, were you surprised at how aggressive Villanova was defensively early in the game? They were willing to leave shooters open, which stunned me. They were aggressive trapping. They hedged screens very hard to where a couple rotation passes. Granted, they were holding that 10-point lead, but I believe Marquette's first, if I recall, 6 baskets were threes, or at least 5. I was surprised that was the defensive game plan that Jay Wright elected to go with, and he kind of stuck with it in the second half. Markus got a lot on his own, but a lot of the open looks they got and threes from Greg Elliott and Cain in the second half were because they were very aggressive attacking whoever had the ball, and they left shooters open.
I've had a sense over the last couple of years with the guard play that we've had that one of the ways to frustrate this team is to apply aggressive on-ball defensive pressure, and maybe that's because the guards are kind of diminutive, so a really
that's absolutely what it is.
But I feel like that can get us out of a rhythm. Nova's long, it's athletic, it's talented and disciplined. If any team is going to gamble on that defensive strategy and win, it's a team like Nova. I was not surprised to see them do that. I think that you are worse off defensively against a team like Marquette to sit back and hope that the looks that Marquette gets are tough and they don't hit them. I would much rather gamble and force turnovers rather than let Marquette run its system. Granted, not many teams are going to be able to do it to the degree Nova did, but if you've got the horses, I would definitely defend Marquette the way Villanova did.
I'll be very interested to see when they go to Milwaukee later this season, when these two teams meet up again, if they make any changes defensively when they play again. I'll wrap with this, John, before we get into Seton Hall. I think that game was, to put a positive spin on it, and I don't think it's really a spin, I think it's reality. If you aren't excited for the future of what this team could be, and I don't want to say will because, God, it's college basketball, things are fickle. But essentially, you look to next season, Andrew Rowsey will be gone, and you are going to have sophomore Greg Elliott and Jamal Cains, and you're going to add a 6'7", 6'8" Joey Hauser on the wing, who's one of the best high school players in America coming in this year. This team's going to get a lot bigger, lose obviously a little bit of its shooting touch because of Rousey's skill, but I think it's going to look a lot more like this Villanova team that we saw. As that sequence in the second half was happening, I went, God, him with a few more pounds on him. I like Elliott. I like Cain. Froling we can get into in a second. I think there's value there. It's not there yet, but I think there is value there. That sequence had me excited thinking down the road.
I agree, and I know we've kind of joked about optimism versus pessimism and things, and it's going. I mean, we're in the middle of the season, so why not enjoy this season? But yeah, looking ahead, this team looks very different next year, and not in a bad way.
Right.
We lose Rowsey, that is a non-zero loss.
Right.
He's
it's going to hurt.
Player.
Absolutely.
We gain a 5-star recruit in Joey Hauser. We get Ed Morrow.
Right.
Because the transfer becomes eligible, and he wasn't a slouch before he transferred. The team suddenly goes from feeling small to being really pretty big from 2 to 5.
And talented.
And talented, absolutely. I mean, and then the other thing that I really like is the possibility of being able to disrupt defenses with personnel by having big down-low presence from somebody like Theo John, who, for all his ups and downs, I think has a great ceiling, to a guy like Froling, who can move and stretch a defense, and you can do interesting things with your offensive system that can frustrate a defense when you have versatile personnel, and being able to kind of change gears with your big men could be a really interesting tool in Wojo's toolbox next year.
And what a transition. You are truly a pro, John Fick. As we pivot to Marquette's next game against Seton Hall, and as John mentions, big men, oh, will they have a task cut out for them. Marquette's favorite opposing big looms on the horizon. That's right, in his 17th year at Seton Hall, Angel Delgado, 6'10", 245, coming off a 28-point, 15-rebound performance of ripping the face off of Butler. John, how excited are you to see this guy again?
It's not great.
No, it's not great. It's bad. Great. It's really, really bad. He's been taking our lunch money for a couple years now.
Yeah, I think he's currently averaging about 15 and 12 if you spot him the round up. He's dangerous in a way that I don't think this team is very well built to attack. I think that the defensive blueprint is going to be something like you saw against Wisconsin, where they knew that if anyone on that team was going to beat him, it was Ethan Happ. You got to double this guy, or we're going to have defensive improvements of the significant nature out of our bigs. Only difference between Seton Hall and Wisconsin is that the other four guys on the floor for Seton Hall are good, if not great, and the other four guys on the floor for Wisconsin were bad, if not terrible. So how do you double Angel Delgado and effectively defend the other four guys? That's the question, Brian.
And the other four guys, two of which are Desi Rodriguez and Cain Carrington, both averaging over 15 points a game. It is a top-heavy group for Seton Hall. Their top four guys do the majority of the scoring. But that top four, I shouldn't leave Miles Powell off. They are going to be, pardon the language, but they're going to be a bitch to guard. Anybody that's watched a Marquette Seton Hall game last year, the year prior, this is a team we have a problem with. They are big, long, and they punish people inside. And they hit the glass, I'd say, John, as well as anyone. So I think this is a good way to wrap it up. The only position group we didn't talk about in the Villanova game were those centers. Theo John, Matt Helt, and Harry Froling. I don't know if they're up to this. I think we're going to find out, and we'll learn a little bit about them, but this is not a good one for the three of them.
No, it is, I think that there is some value in throwing strength at young guys and watching to see how they respond. Sometimes people play up to their competition, and if you think Theo John isn't aware that people are somewhat skeptical that he's going to be able to defend Angel Delgado, you're kidding yourself, and I'm sure that he is pissed off and wants to show people that they're wrong. He's got all the physical tools necessary to defend Angel Delgado.
You beat me to that. So if you're Wojo, obviously Theo's got to not foul every 5 seconds, but does he have an opportunity to see the majority of the minutes at the 5 just for that reason?
I don't think so, because I don't think that he will be able to defend Angel Delgado without fouling. A note that I wrote down about Theo's minutes against Nova is that he looked kind of like a freshman in his positioning.
He did.
In a large part because he was playing against such veteran talent on Nova that knew what to do, where to be, how to move. Angel Delgado is that, every bit of that. And so Theo needs to bone up his positioning and his movement and rotations and everything, and that to stay in a position to defend without fouling, and that's almost hard to see him doing because of the quality of Angel Delgado. I don't know. He certainly could. If he can defend without fouling, yes. But otherwise, I think this is a situation where it's going to be defense by committee, and if you can deny Delgado the ball and you double on him and make him pass out of the post, then that's the win defensively. I don't know that you can one-on-one him and with the guys we have and win that matchup.
Helt was bad against Villanova. Froling was, while I have a longer leash on Froling, I'm okay with him attempting to do athletic things and try and get his shot off because I think he's the best shot we have to get production out of that spot. He didn't do it against Villanova. You're right. It's going to be by committee.
I will make a note just real quickly about the Seton Hall matchup. It feels like we should be a pretty big dog. Looking at KenPom has Seton Hall winning by 1. The line is a half a point. They have a 51% confidence rate on that prediction. So basically KenPom, who is clearly smarter than me, thinks it's a coin flip. I'll take it. I say, we've got a puncher's chance. it may be better than a puncher's chance, and this would be an extremely valuable win come tournament seeding time for the Big East tournament resume time for the NCAA tournament. And call me crazy, but I didn't think we were going to be in it against Xavier at home. We almost stole that one. We could pull this off.
Seton Hall is coming in as the last unbeaten team in conference play. They are 3-0, wins against Creighton, St. John's, and at Butler this past weekend. So they are coming in confident. It will be a big challenge for Marquette. We look forward to talking to you after that one. For John Fick and all of us here at the Real Chili Podcast, thank you so much for listening. Have a good one.